Hello and greetings, fellow StarCrafters. PGO Milncraft here with a 1 versus 1 between the blue Protoss player EGHuk up here in the top left corner and his opponent coL.Naniwa, who is now Complexities.Naniwa, as he did in fact change teams. I forgot exactly when he did that. This game is from MLG Raleigh, Raleigh, which is in North Carolina. I've actually been to Raleigh. It's very nice, but it's so it's a little bit older. It's not the latest patch. So, but most of those things in that patch were not really applicable to a Protoss versus Protoss, unless I'm forgetting something, and I don't think I am. So it shouldn't be too different. And of course, I would say Protoss versus Protosses were just a little bit less refined back then, in the sense that there'd kind of been the warp gate changes and the pylon changes to make 4 gates less appealing, and I don't think it's necessarily just as clear exactly what the differences were back then. This map is Shakuras Plateau, well known to be a macro map, but in a Protoss versus Protoss, it's very not often, I guess I would say, that it's rare. That's the way to describe it. It's rare that a map will go to more than 2 bases, or even to more than 1 base, as Protoss players will get things like, maybe they'll both 4-gate, and then after the 4-gate they'll both transition to robotics, and they'll get robotics bay. That's something you would never see against Terran, to have 4 gates, a robotics facility, and a robotics bay before you had an expansion up. But against, in a Protoss versus Protoss, because it's so equal, it's very hard to be able to spend the amount of resources on an expansion and not lose it. Looks like Huk is going to go ahead and scout the correct direction right away, so he will get a good view of Naniwa's base right away. Make sure he's not getting cheesed, 2-gate proxy or anything like that. Fairly rare on a 4-player map. Meanwhile, Naniwa's probe is just going to take just a little bit longer to be able to do that. And just to talk about the players a little bit, Nani was a very good player. He did very well in the TSL. Did he win? I don't know if... No, I don't think he won, but he was like 3rd, I believe. He's also participated in a number of other tournaments and done very well in those. Huk, meanwhile, is the only foreigner in Code S, I believe. I'm not sure if he's the only foreigner, but he's one of the only foreigners and non-Korean players that there is. Now, it actually looks like, because he's saving up so much Chrono Boost and he hasn't gotten a second gas yet, Huk is most likely actually just going for a 4-gate here. And we'll see if he starts actually chrono boosting out that warp gate energy, or that warp gate right now. He is chrono boosting out that stalker that will be able to deal with the probe. Meanwhile, let's take a look at Naniwa's build. Naniwa appears to be going for the same build. However, it could easily change after they decide, like after they take care of the probe, maybe they get a second gas or something like that. It is just important to be able to deal with the probe. Now, I believe that, yes. So, Naniwa used the extra chrono either on his number of workers, which it looks like he did not use it on the number of workers, but Huk used it on the gateway to get the early stalker out. So Huk will have a little bit of an advantage with his stalker, and we'll see if he's able to turn that into something or not. We do see that both players did in fact go for... Ooh, and that probe does take a swing from that zealot. Possibly the stalker will be able to take it out. Not exactly sure. Looks like he will not be able to do so yet. Now, both players did in fact get their second gas. We see that Naniwa is going for a Twilight Council, which is most likely going to be for Blink Stalkers. Otherwise, he would have gotten that second gas a little bit sooner, is what I would have guessed. He is going up to 3 gateways now. Should be fairly safe, because Huk is not in fact 4-gating. He is in fact going for a robotics facility. The robotics facility will give him an observer, which will give him a very good idea of exactly what Nani was going for. It will also protect him against DTs and allow for Immortals. Now, Immortals in this version, that's entirely what I forgot about when I was talking about balance changes earlier. Immortals do not have that range bonus in this game, so it just makes them a little bit less likely. Naniwa being very smart right there, checking for that hidden pylon. He will opt to take that out most likely a little bit in the future. Can't do that just now because he doesn't want to move out and expose all of his forces in his base to Huk's attack, as I don't think he does not have the watchtowers. Huk does, so he's not quite sure exactly where Huk's forces are at the moment. He doesn't want to lose him very quickly. He is in fact going for Blink. It looks like Huk is going for Blink as well, as he is getting a Twilight Council. That Twilight Council is going to be a little bit delayed, but as long as Huk can avoid combat until he gets his own Blink Stalkers out, then he should be just fine. And actually, if Naniwa was aiming for some sort of timing attack, I think he probably would have gotten a 4th gateway, most likely. And he would have started moving out by now, as Blink would have gotten there by the time he got to Huk's base. Looks like Huk actually is a very zealot-heavy composition, which isn't going to be too useful against Blink Stalkers, as they are quite useful at dodging Zealots in general, just because they're able to blink away. But they are useful for preventing, for example, the Blink Stalkers jumping up here. It's very useful in preventing that. Now, Huk did get an Observer. Did he get the Observer across? Oh, he has another hidden pylon. Wow, nice job. And that Stalker's going to get taken out. That's very unfortunate for Huk. That's a relatively big loss. Looks like the Observer did not. I don't know if the Observer... I do not believe he made it all the way across. So Huk does not exactly know what his opponent's going for, but he might be able to tell from the composition that it is Blink Stalkers. Now, as I was saying earlier, the Zealots basically prevent the Blink Stalkers from blinking onto the ramp, as if the Blink Stalkers blink onto the ramp, they blink right into the midst of the Zealots. And actually, Huk should probably spread his Zealots just a little bit more to be able to prevent that. Ooh, Nani was really considering going for it. And actually, he does decide to go for it. I'm not sure this is a good decision, as Huk does have a number of Stalkers up there as well, and Huk has finished Blink. So I think Nani was actually going to lose a lot of Stalkers in this engagement. He might be able to target down some probes. Very nice work. Nice block, though, by Huk. Able to prevent those Stalkers from being able to move any farther. The Blink cooldown time is now finished. They are going to be able to take out that Stalker. Looks like that Stalker will be able to blink away. However, it looks like those Stalkers will barely be able to get out. However, oh god, and he's going to lose that extra Stalker right there. Nice timing on the blink. That looked really cool, actually, as the shots were in the air. The rest of his Stalkers blinked forward. Now, if we go to the Units tab, which I think is more important in a Protoss versus Protoss, we see that the Stalker count is currently even. Both players blinked on top of each other there. I'm not sure that was wise move by Huk, as he probably wanted to blink away and wait for his Zealots to catch up. His Zealots are now arriving and dealing a little bit of damage. However, most of the Stalkers were already taken out. Looks like Huk was warping in Stalkers in the flank attack, but they did not quite arrive in time in order to be able to deal additional damage. Naniwa is up to 4 gateways right now, which is basically the maximum that you can support off of one base. Looks like Huk is getting additional probes, possibly preparing to take an expansion, but that's not going to come anytime soon, as there are a lot of Blink Stalkers. He is now outnumbering Huk's Blink Stalkers 10-6. Which is extremely important, as Blink Stalkers are the most useful unit in a Protoss versus Protoss engagement. Looks like he's able to do a nice little bit of micro, and he's able to blink micro away. Oh, I think Huk might just be dead right here. Now, one thing that's preventing Naniwa from being able to kill Huk at this point in time is that he actually doesn't have a pylon close enough to be able to warp in additional reinforcements. They have to warp in at this pylon all the way over here and walk over there, so that's not going to be too useful there. He is going to be able to target down some probes, however. Huk does have a considerable probe count lead at this point in time, so that's not going to matter too much in the long run. However, it's always nice to deal a little bit of economic damage while you can, and he's preventing mining from this gas right now, so that is cutting Huk's production certainly in the short term. Looks like nice blink micro from both players. Look at all those Stalkers in the red, and Huk is targeting them down, doing a very nice job of that. I think probably one Zealot would be useful for Huk to be able to warp in. These reinforcements for Naniwa have now arrived, however, and it looks like he's able to take out a couple of more Stalkers. Naniwa is now up to a 6-4 lead against Huk, and you can see that Huk's gas count is actually what's preventing him from getting Stalkers, so he should probably transfer a couple more probes onto gas, but actually Huk is just going to lose the game, as Blink Stalkers just proved how extremely formidable they are. And was Huk on? Okay. So there were a couple of things that were working against Huk that game. Now, I don't think... maybe I was wrong about this blink jump in, but I don't think that actually was effective for Naniwa, but I think he was able to pull out the game anyway. He traded relatively equally during this attack, and he was able to kill a couple of probes as well, which caused a little bit of economic damage to Huk. But what I think the reason that Huk ended up losing is, first of all, he didn't get an Immortal out of his robotics facility. Second of all, he ended up warping in, I think he had 4 Zealots in a Sentry. Now, 4 Zealots in a Sentry is actually not useful basically at all against Blink Stalkers, as I did say that Zealots do prevent the warp in. However, the Zealots were all together, and so the blink up was able to happen without them. And what happens is, since Stalkers are faster and Blink Stalkers can of course blink away as well from Zealots ended up being... And Zealots basically do nothing in a Protoss versus Protoss where both players have Blink Stalkers. And so that was one issue against him. He also only had 3 gateways to replenish Stalkers. He didn't use the robotics at all. He just got an Observer. He didn't get an Immortal at all. And finally, in that last attack especially, Naniwa was able to cut off his gas right away, and Huk was never able to reestablish the second gas, which means that he had a bunch of minerals to be able to warp in. Stalkers, he did not have enough gas, and so he was gas starved, and he had to end up warping in Zealots. But these Zealots were basically useless, as you can see, Naniwa was just hiding behind the minerals, able to deal as much damage as he wanted to those Zealots, and then start picking apart the probes and the rest of Huk's forces. So even though Naniwa did not in fact have a pylon that was close enough, right? This was the closest pylon, which is really, really far away. Like, look at the minimap. That's a long, long distance for your reinforcements to have to travel, especially in a Protoss versus Protoss. He was still able to take the game. So, a very nice game from both players. Definitely looking forward to seeing more of this in the future. This is PGL Milncraft signing off.